Senior Captain Zhang, how should we understand the level of exercises that Liaoning, the aircraft carrier, is now doing at this moment?
Well, I think it was conducting a normal and routine training according to the training plan of the PLO Navy. But it was the first time for the aircraft to carry its fighter jets to the high seas to conduct such kind of training. This is the first time.
It is not just the aircraft with its fighter jets, but also something called the initial operation capabilities. So exactly, what is Liaoning trying to achieve this time?
Well, we can see that through the Bohai Sea, the East China Sea, and South China Sea, and also the Western Pacific Ocean, that the Liaoning aircraft carrier and its supporting vessels, including the destroyers and air frigates, and also the fighter jets on its deck, have been conducting tactical training, including the air confrontation training and also air refueling training.
I see.
This training require high level techniques and also tactics. And this is the first time for the aircraft carrier to go to the Western Pacific region. So all this shows that the aircraft carrier has achieved its initial operational capability.
Okay, maybe some of the terminology you use, Senior Captain Zhang, is not that familiar to our audience from all over the world, but certainly could be familiar to General Clark. And therefore, General Clark, what is your judgment of exactly what Liaoning is doing there? Are people overreacting to it? They're overly concerned?
Well, I think that all of us who've watched the progress of the Chinese Navy have understood that the Liaoning was going to become operational, that its pilots needed training, its pilots were going to move beyond Chinese coastal waters, and the ship was going to be prepared for deployment. So I don't think there's any military significance in this beyond the fact that the Chinese Navy is gaining blue water capabilities. I think the concern you're seeing has to do with the larger issues concerning China's overall policy, its intent in the South China Sea, and a little bit from the dust-up in rhetoric between President-elect Trump and Chinese leadership.
Mr. Teng, here in Beijing, what do you make of General Clark's judgment? At this point, is Taiwan issue one of the reasons, at least, Liaoning is there?
I don't think there is any direct connection between the training and the issue of Taiwan at this moment. But some, media in Taiwan or some, politicians in Taiwan said this is actually a very specific training targeted at the separatists in Taiwan.
But from the Chinese military side, there are already formal suggestion that it is there, Liaoning, in the waters, together with some of the other fighter jets, to make sure China has the capability of a unified country.
Yeah, this is another side of the coin. I think this is a continuation of our test. This is a test and the experiment platform for the future aircraft carrier. And I think the most important part for this training is that we have a real complete task force, including the aircraft carrier, destroyer, frigates, and also submarine even, and also the fighters. And we also saw the refueling, in the air, and also the fire of the missiles in the training. This is a very important step for the task force or the battle group of aircraft. That means China Navy does have the real task force of aircraft carrier.
I see. Senior Captain Zhang, there have been two diverse opinions about exactly what Liaoning is about. There's one stream of opinions suggesting, well, Liaoning is just one of those retired from other countries and China remake it a little bit, repaired it, and put it on the water just to demonstrate China has the capability of having an aircraft carrier. So it's not much of a deal at all. And others are suggesting, wow, this is really serious. China is trying to flex its muscles in the South China Sea, trying to demonstrate to the neighboring countries that China can and will do something in the near future. So these, of course, opinions are very different from one another, but these are all circling, as you can see in the media. Exactly. Why is China having Liaoning? Why is China trying at this critical point when the president in the United States coming into the office, trying to do this drill? And what is China's ambition, really? Navy-wise, you're coming from the Navy Research Institute. You probably could tell us exactly what it's about.
Well, it's a big question. But first, I want to say that the aircraft carrier is a good weapon to defend our motherland. And also, I want to say that by conducting high seas training and also remote training with its fighter jets and also its supporting destroyers and frigates, I think this demonstrates this aircraft carrier or the Chinese Navy has achieved its initial operational capabilities that can extend our maritime defense range. But on the other side, I want to say that it is only initial operational capability, but not full operational capability. It's a far way for the aircraft carrier to achieve full operational capability.
Okay, Senior Captain Zhang, I want to be even more direct with you with this question.
Yeah.
Is China's developing aircraft carrier, including having this drill of Liaoning and some of the other fighter jets on it, to deter or to, in the future, proactively taking military actions against others in the region?
First, I want to say this routine training of the Liaoning aircraft carrier is not flexing muscle. We know that the United States Navy has 10 aircraft carriers operating all over the world. And this one is not want to show our strength, not want to say that this, but by having an aircraft carrier or more aircraft carriers will certainly improve our defense capabilities.
It's not fair if I keep on to let you explain about things, which you have explained very clearly at this point. So you talk about numbers. Let's talk about numbers. U.S. Department of Defense recently outlined the capability gap between Chinese and the U.S. navies. Take a look at this. China so far has only one aircraft carrier, though there are reports that another one bigger than the Liaoning is under construction. We cannot confirm it at this point. While the United States has 10 carriers plus one near commissioning and another one under construction. General Clark, I want to go to you about that. What is U.S. having in mind? Of course, you are one of the most powerful countries in the world, and to do that is to keep peace in the world. Certainly, military is there to deter, and yet many are wondering whether your military is likely to take some unpredictable or unwelcome gestures and actions in the waters near China as well.
I wouldn't think so, but you know, we do have a policy of maintaining 10 operational aircraft carriers, and these carriers, as they age, they're replaced by other carriers. So what you're seeing is the normal process. There are carriers that will be decommissioned and there will be new carriers that will be brought in. Most of these carriers are stationed on the east coast of the United States, some on the west coast. One is stationed in Japan. They mostly rotate in and out of Europe, the Mediterranean, and the Persian Gulf. And so at one point, we've had up to 3 in the Persian Gulf. We're still mostly focused on the Middle East and in the Mediterranean and the Persian Gulf. So that's the way these carriers operate. They go out for long periods of time, and just as Liaoning has done, they do change their crews, they do operational workups, and then they deploy. So that's the pattern of this.
But General Clark, help me to understand this. I'm not a military person, of course not Navy at all, but if the U.S. aircraft carrier is also in the region doing its what they call surveillance in the international water, while the fighter jets are also in the international air doing what they call drills and the routines, while the Chinese ones are also there, is there a chance, at least a slight chance, that there might be some accidents, if I could use the word, or
I would
chances
not
of
think so.
even small-scale conflict? Why not, General Clark?
No, I don't think there's much chance of this because the United States Navy is extremely well trained and disciplined, and as China builds its blue water fleet, it's also developing the procedures to effectively coordinate and avoid these kinds of incidents at sea. We had a long understanding with the Soviet Navy during the Cold War that helped us avoid any misunderstandings, and there have been these continuing discussions around the South China Sea about moving toward these understandings. There's some progress in that area. It's probably not as definitive as it was between the United States and the Soviets, but as China develops its Navy, it's going to want those assurances.
Mr. Teng, come back to you.
Yeah.
If General Clark has dismissed the opportunity or the chance, at least, of any accident, then what about the danger of other countries or other players in the region?
You mean in
When
South China Sea or in?
Liaoning is out there a few days ago. There were reports in the media suggesting from Taiwan authorities, some members have suggesting Taiwan is likely to take, quote, responsive actions when necessary,
Yeah.
end of quote. What would that mean to Liaoning and also this routine drill as Senior Captain Zhang just described? Not only that, but also Japan, which China does not at this point enjoy very friendly, shall I say, diplomatic relations because of history issues, because of recent South China Sea, East China Sea issues. So what about the possibility there? Mr. Teng, I should also ask you about any chance of danger.
There is some danger for the accidental, clash between the Chinese Navy and the Japanese Navy in the future. But I think, as every blue water navy, it does have two capabilities. The first is operation in the war, and the second is a deterrent capability. The Chinese white paper on defense last year also stated that the Chinese Navy should carry out the coastal defense and also the high sea protection. So this is actually an assignment given by the Chinese government to our Navy. And any practice, of course, because Navy is international service, and among the 3 or 4 services in armed forces, very international and very professional actually. And I talked to Admiral Swift, the 7th Fleet Commander, in Canberra, I think, last March, and about the action and reaction in the South China Sea between the two navies. And he said that the two sides were very professional, very active, because every side had their own routine and the procedure to exchange their signals and to communicate with each other. So this is a very specific arrangement for the two
Mr.
navies.
Teng, let me just cut in here, because we're not now talking about US and China anymore. We're talking about other players as well. So, for example, Japan is a United States ally in the region. Being an ally, the description of that is coming to rescue when there is danger. So will there be a proxy possibility of conflict? I mean, when it comes to military, we want to be 100% sure that there would not be any accident because of anything. But having said that, though, there seem to be possibilities, Mr. Teng, very briefly coming from you.
Yeah, there is a possibility for the clash between the two sides, even between China and Japan in the area and in the high sea. So
General Clark, I want you to respond to that. Proxy.
I think that it's the responsibility of all naval powers to have their ships, their crews, their airmen disciplined, trained, have the right procedures to identify the forces of other nations and to take measures so there's no misunderstanding. So we don't see this as a problem of an accident. If there's a challenge, if there's some political intent behind it, yes, there can be difficulties. But in terms of the technical military procedures, there's no issue.
Okay, talking
Ships
about
of many nations work together all the time.
Okay, talking about politics, let's talk about politics. We only have a few minutes left. That's a good thing when we talk about politics. We do see a lot of politics, General Clark, including President-elect Trump before coming into the office, his rhetoric concerning Taiwan and some of the other issues. And meanwhile, Japan's urgent willingness to establish some kinds of what the Prime Minister of Japan called alliance of hope. Obviously, it's about a value system, excluding other players in the Asia-Pacific region with the United States. So with this in mind, how much are we going to see politics threatening the security of this region in the coming weeks and months? General Clark.
I don't think you're going to see a substantial threat to the region through politics. But
Come on, I mean, General Clark, are you too optimistic?
Some
You're the
discussions.
most optimistic one among all of us.
I'm very optimistic. Sure, I'm optimistic. Well, why? Well, I'll tell you why I'm optimistic.
Go ahead.
China and the United States have deep converging interests. We're both interested in economic development of our own people. We're interested in working with others around the world. We have different systems of government, but we have many common interests. And so we're very happy to work these interests together. And I think those interests extend to the other nations in the Pacific, Asia-Pacific area too. So I think it's a matter really for each nation and for groups of nations to work on what's common and build up the common shared interests and work to minimize those interests which are divergent. And that's the task of national leadership.
Right.
That's the task of politicians. So, you know, that's what military people, they do their jobs. They learn their technologies. They are ready if called on. They're all patriotic. They want to defend their countries. But it's up to the political leaders to work to smooth out the rise of nations.
Right.
Everybody understands China's growing in its importance. We all respect China for that, and we admire the Chinese leadership and the Chinese people for what they've accomplished over the last 35, 40 years. It's amazing. So we want to see China take its rightful place in the harmony and harmonious conduct of international affairs.
Okay, General Clark, I hope many of those coming into the office in a few weeks will think in the same way as you do, sir. Coming back to you, we only have 30 seconds left. Senior Captain Zhang, what if there is going to be arms race in the region? Will China, and how will China respond to that?
Well,
Can China and U.S. work together?
I don't think there will be an arms race in this region. And China's normal development of the military will not cause an arms race. But we can see that Japan is developing its offensive military capabilities in this region. This is a much concern to many countries in this region.